Welcome to Jank Play TCG. My name's Landon, and here we play Jank. And today I have a fan-submitted deck to play for you guys. This week has been a little chaotic for me. It's a good friend of mine. He submitted it. I know I said fan submitted, but it's a friend of mine. He submitted it. He also helped with the Fossil Jank deck, if you remember that deck. So here he is bringing us a zero energy Hisuian Arcanine deck. Now, this isn't exactly a fresh take or anything. This is just his interpretation of what makes a good Hisuian Arcanine deck. And, I mean, to start off, we've got 4 copies of Hisuian Arcanine with that zero energy attack. Very vulnerable, which does 10 damage, but if you have no cards in hand, this attack does 150 more damage. So that's 160 damage for 0 energy, which is pretty awesome. It evolves from this Hisuian Growlithe, who also has a 0 energy attack. Flip a coin. If heads, during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks. Only way to get around that is like an escape rope or boss's orders or something along those lines, getting this out of the active, and then you gotta attack something else. So really like that 0 energy attack while you're setting up the Hisuian Arcanine. We are of course playing Manaphy to protect these vulnerable basics that we're playing. We've got 3 copies of Skwovet, because sometimes you're gonna have to Skwovet multiple times because you have to get to a 0 card hand, and Nest Stash allows you to go down to a 1 card hand. You shuffle your hand, put it at the bottom of your deck, and then draw 1 card. We're hunting for a playable card, a card that we can play to basically empty our hand and get us into the right position for the deck, right? So that's why we're playing so many Skwovet, because sometimes you got Nest Stash multiple times. And then of course we're playing Radiant Venusaur. It seems like Radiant Venusaur was designed to work with Hisuian Arcanine. With the Sunny Bloom ability, once at the end of your turn, after your attack, you may use this ability. Draw until you have 4 cards in hand. So Hisuian Arcanine attacks with no cards in hand, does the 160 damage, then Radiant Venusaur's ability goes off, and you can draw up until you have 4 cards in hand, and then you'll draw 1 for the beginning of your next turn, and that's 5 cards you have to play out your turn, set up what you need to set up, and empty out your hand to attack again with Hisuian Arcanine. And straightforward Hisuian Arcanine, we're not really playing any other attackers because we're not playing any energy. So no energy, so we can just jump right into the cards. And these are the cards that he picked. You might see this and think, wow, that's a lot of items. And you're right, it is, because we want to be able to play them, and supporters can really clunk up a hand. So we are playing 1 Judge. It's going to be a decent draw for us, and possible hand manipulation against your opponent, so that we can try to get what we need going forward. We've got 2 copies of Practice Studio, which is really cool in this deck, because the attacks of Stage 1 Pokemon, both yours and your opponent, do 10 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon before applying weakness and resistance. So that means Hisuian Arcanine is actually doing 170 with Practice Studio out. So that's really cool. Then we've got 4 copies of Switch. Switch allows you to just switch one of your bench Pokemon for your active Pokemon. Pretty useful card, especially, you know, if you put, say, a Skwovet in the active, and then you get that Hisuian Arcanine to evolve that Hisuian Growlithe, then you can switch into that Arcanine and move forward from there. So we've got 4 copies of that. We've got 2 copies of Grant. Now, I do think you could go down to 1 copy, but that's really up to you. Grant is pretty awesome because during your turn, if Grant is in your discard pile, you may discard 2 cards from your hand, except any Grant, from your hand, and if you do, put this Grant into your hand. So it's a nice way to clear out cards in your hand, but also during your turn, your fighting Pokemon do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So that's 30 more than what Arcanine's already doing. You can empty out your hand a little bit better. You can then play Grant, do 30 more damage, and hit the numbers you need to. So with Practice Studio out, we are looking at 200 damage from a Hisuian Arcanine, which is pretty awesome. We are now starting to reach Pokemon V era, right? Pokemon V are going to be around that HP. So they're still more ways to manipulate our damage. We'll get to that soon. Next up, we've got 2 copies of Artazon. And Artazon's pretty good for getting your basics out. The only issue is it cannot grab rule box Pokemon. So that means we cannot grab Radiant Venusaur with Artazon. We gotta find it in another way, and getting Radiant Venusaur out is pretty important to the deck. So Artazon's pretty good for getting your basics, but be careful because it won't get you Venusaur. Next up, we've got 3 copies of Defiance Band, and there is an argument of playing Defiance Band versus Choice Band, but I like the choice here to go Defiance Band. I think this is a fantastic tool card that does not see enough play, so seeing it in this deck made me very happy. Next up, we've got 2 copies of Escape Rope. It forces your opponent to switch their active with one they're benched, and then you do the same. So you get to see what they put in the active before you put something in the active. It gives you a little bit of information. This type of card does make me wish there was some sort of free retreater in the deck. I'm not sure how that would work with the zero energy aspect. Something like Cyclizar would be cool, but we don't have an energy to even do the attack that lets you draw 2 cards. So not 100% sure who to play. I'd really have to look through the Pokemon, and I'm not doing that. This is a deck rundown. Next up, we've got 4 copies of Trekking Shoes. Just lets you look at the top card of your deck. You can discard it if you want, and if you do, you draw the next card. Lets you cycle through your deck a little bit faster, try to find what you need moving forward, and it's a pretty good card, and we were at 4 of course. We've got, how many copies is that? 2 copies of Hisuian Heavy Ball. In case some of your basics get prized, Hisuian Heavy Ball can search it out, and worst case scenario, if you don't have anything prized, which is kind of good news, it means it's in your deck, you can go find it. Heavy Ball just turns into a burn 1 card. You know, you can just play it and not grab anything because there's no basics, and you're good. You're golden. You keep moving on with your life, right? Next up, we've got 4 copies of Pokémon Catcher. I think this is a little aggressive going all the way up to 4 copies, but I understand the idea of you do need to just burn cards sometimes. However, I have been running into a situation when I was playing this before recording. I would be in a situation where Pokemon Catcher is like my only card in hand, and I don't want to switch the active. So do I play it, risk hitting heads in order to switch the active and then attack something I don't really want to attack? Or do I, Skwovet it away and hope my top deck is something better? It was a difficult choice. I think 4 might be a bit too much, but I understand the reason behind it. Next up, we've got 3 copies of Super Rod. Super Rod lets you shuffle up in any combination of Pokemon or basic energy cards, up to 3, back into your deck. Of course, we're not playing energy, so it's just to recover Pokemon. You probably won't need to play more than 2 in a match, but having that 3rd there can offer some flexibility in case of bad prizing and you do need to recover more, so I do like that card in the deck. Next up, we've got 1 copy of Pal Pad. Obviously, you can only play 1 supporter per turn, so having too many supporters in your deck can really clunk it up, but sometimes you really want a supporter back in your deck. Whether that's Judge or Boss's Orders, those are the main targets. You might want that back in your deck so you can use it later on, so I think Pal Pad's a great addition. Next up, we've got 4 copies of Gutsy Pickaxe. Now, Gutsy Pickaxe usually is there to accelerate fighting energy sometimes. However, in this case, it's just a draw 1. It's a blank card. It basically brings our card total in our deck down to 56, because Gutsy Pickaxe will just let us draw a card, because there's no energy there, so we're not going to be able to attach anything. Next up, we've got 4 copies of Nest Ball. Get your basics out, including Radiant Venusaur. Now, next, we have 1 copy of Boss's Orders. Like I mentioned before, supporters, we don't want too many of them, so having just 1 copy and a Pal Pad allows us to gust up to 2 Pokemon throughout the game, and I think that's a good way to handle that Boss's Orders. Plus, we got 4 copies of Pokemon Catcher, and if you need it to hit heads, hopefully it hit heads at least once, right? Alright, we've got 4 copies of Capturing Aroma Flip a coin. If heads, you get an evolution, a Hisuian Arcanine, and if you flip tails, you get basic, basically anything else in your deck, any other Pokemon in the deck at least. And last but not least, we've got 4 copies of Great Ball. I think Great Ball is great. Sorry about that. But you get to look at the top 7 cards of your deck, reveal a Pokemon you find there, and shuffle the other cards back into your deck. You don't have to grab a Pokemon off this. You can just burn a card if you're not... you know, if you don't hit the Pokemon you need, you can not grab a Pokemon. Just burn that card so you have a 0 card hand. And that's the goal here. That's why there's so many items. You can play as many items in your turn as you want, as long as they actually do something in the game. And you can search for a Pokemon and still fail it. So, you know, that's the goal. Let's go ahead, run into test deck, and watch this deck kind of unfold. Of course, my friend's username is ProfessorW328, so if you want to, you know, say hi to him, send him a friend request, I guess. I don't know. But looks like we flip heads, so the AI opponent will choose to go first. Very unlikely that they will let us go first. Yeah, I didn't think so. So let's go ahead and jump into this match. I love these Growlithe sleeves. So we are starting just a lone Skwovet. Ouch. Not the start we want. We really want to start Growlithe. Growlithe is really the only... Growlithe and Arcanine are really the only Pokemon we want going into the active spot here. So we get to draw 1 card because they did mulligan. And Arcanine is weak to grass, so it looks like they're playing that superior grass deck. It might be messing with the numbers just that little bit. No, if they do 190, they would get a KO anyways. So let's just keep moving forward, right? We top deck a Defiance Band, but we've got some Search and we've got Judge going on. So let's go ahead. We can Trekking Shoes. Great Ball. Yeah, we'll take a Great Ball. That'll give us 2 search opportunities for some Growlithes. There's a Growlithe. Wow, we hit 3 off that, but we can only grab 1 Pokemon. We will bench that. Let's do another Great Ball. Another Growlithe. Beautiful. Alright. Get that Growlithe down. Now we do have Artazon. We can get another Pokemon down. I think I'm going to go Skwovet this time. We've got 2 Growlithes. We've got 1 Arcanine in hand. We've got a Switch. But do I want to switch? I think I do. Oh, whoops. I think I do want to switch into a Growlithe. Get that Skwovet onto the bench. And we'll just defensive posture here. Hopefully we flip heads. We do, so this Growlithe will not take any damage during my opponent's turn, which is pretty cool. And we're just buying a turn, right? So our Altaria is resistant to fighting, but it's only minus 30 and it only has 110 HP. So even with that, Arcanine's still getting a 1-hit KO. We just need to empty our hand next turn. So I'm probably going to play Judge. It'll really depend on where my opponent ends their hand at, right? So they're getting a lot of cards off that Professor's Research they need. But the AI, being the AI, of course, goes into a weird situation here where they retreated the Altaria that had energy for a Kricketune V in the active. Now, I'm not saying that's the wrong move, but certainly an awkward move, right? Yeah, they would have only gotten to do Magical Echo, which would not have done any damage, so maybe that's why. Maybe that does make sense in a weird way. So we'll go ahead and use Artazon, grab another Growlithe here. We do have Hisuian Heavy Ball, might as well use. Ooh, we've got Manaphy and Skwovet. I'm going to grab Manaphy, but I don't know if I'm going to play it yet. We've got so much down. Now, against Kricketune, if we do 160, we're not getting the KO. So if I play Grant, we might be able to get the KO, which would be pretty cool. So I'm going to play Grant. So I'll do 30 more damage. Now I need to get to a 0-card hand, and I can't do that with Judge in my hand. So I'm going to Nest Dash. Capturing Aroma. That is a beautiful card to get right now. Flip heads. We'll grab a Hisuian Arcanine. We can play one down, and we'll have 0 cards in hand, and we'll KO this Kricketune V pretty easily. 190 damage against Kricketune V. Whoops. I'm moving stuff in my studio, so, you know, my shed studio. So, things are in the way that weren't in the way before. We get a Great Ball and a Hisuian Heavy Ball. We can go ahead and grab that last Skwovet from the deck, or from the prizes, and then we'll Great Ball. We're still looking for a Radiant Venusaur. That would be probably the best Pokemon to get right now. Oof. So their surprise attack is certainly surprising, doing 30 damage to us. Alright, so we top deck a Hisuian Arcanine. So we play that down. We will go ahead and play Great Ball. We hit the Radiant Venusaur. Absolutely beautiful. And honestly, I think I'm just going to fail this Hisuian Heavy Ball. I know we have a Skwovet there, but I don't want it. So we're going to fail that search and have a 0-card hand. So we can do 130 and KO this Swablu. Then we will grab our prize for that KO. And then Radiant Venusaur's ability will kick in. And that'll let us draw up until we have 4 cards in hand. And this just looks like it's going to be a clean sweep. It looks like they're not going to get Superior out. And if they do, I'm not too worried about it. We're now ahead 3 prizes. Yeah, they play down a Kricketot, which evolves into Kricketune. And that might increase their grass Pokemon HP. But if they're not playing any grass Pokemon, that doesn't really matter, right? So, interesting stuff going on here. The AI, as always, not knowing how to play the game. They do get the Dragon-type Altaria out, which will let them search for a supporter and put that on top of their deck. So it guarantees their draw next turn, but I'm not worried. Defiance Band, a failed Pokemon, a Great Ball search. Wow, we even hit a Growlithe. Yeah, we're going to fail that. And we've got 2 switches. So we'll just switch. And switch to that one. I don't know. And attack. KOing the Pyukumuku and getting our 4th prize. That's how the deck's supposed to function, right? We are able to just kind of go through our cards, burning as many as we need, and getting down to a 0-card hand. Alright, so next up, I'm probably going to play Practice Studio, get rid of the Artazon so they can't get their basics out anymore. Not that they were really using it, but we certainly don't need it. So, yeah, they just used it and failed it. Ooh, Boss's Order's coming down. Wish I saved one of those switches at this point, but, you know, we'll see how this plays out, right? We've still got 2 more switches and 2 escape ropes, so who knows. We do get a Nest Ball we can't play, a Super Rod we can't play, lots of cards that we can't play, Capturing Aroma, and, well, Pokemon Catcher, maybe. Let's go ahead and see if we hit heads. We do hit heads on Pokemon Catcher. I'm going to drag up this Altaria here, and I'm going to Skwovet. Nest Stash, do we get something to get us out of the active? Another Pokemon Catcher. Nest Stash, what do we get? A Switch! Beautiful! That's exactly what we wanted. We get a Switch, and Arcanine KOs the only thing with energy on my opponent's side. Grabbing our 5th prize. Sweet. That one. A Skwovet. Alright. And yes, we will Sunny Bloom. 2 Gutsy Pickaxes and a Nest Ball. Now that Nest Ball is not really playable. The chances of them knocking us out, like, I mean, they could have, if they attached 2 energy to Kricketune, and one of them wasn't a double turbo, if they just attached 2 basic grass energy, they actually could have knocked out Hisuian Arcanine. That's kind of funny to me. Gutsy Pickaxe, we get another Nest Ball, Gutsy Pickaxe, we get a Manaphy, I'll play the Escape Rope. We'll put Arcanine up, and we will Skwovet. Oh, clicked it too soon. We'll Skwovet. So now we're just looking for kind of a burnable card, right? A Pal Pad, that's beautiful. We can burn that. We'll shuffle Grant back into our deck, and we will go ahead and attack. And that's really what the deck is about. Burning cards in our hand in order to attack. And if your opponent is better than the AI, which I think every opponent is better than the AI, this should be it will take a little bit more work on your end to keep the attacks going as they're knocking out your Hisuian Arcanines. So against live opponents, this is going to be a little bit different. As always, that's why I'm going to be playing this deck against live opponents throughout the week. So be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the future games from this Zero Energy Hisuian Arcanine deck submitted by ProfessorW328. And, join the Discord where you can submit your own deck so that when I don't have time to get the details done on a deck, which I do have a deck close to finished, I can go ahead and use your deck and shout you out and all that stuff. Because I really appreciate everyone that submits decks to help me with my time requirements and everything. And of course, until next time, keep playing Jank.